And even the Greeks didn't know those idioms. So it wasn't like the Arabs could go to the Greeks and go, dude, what does this idiom mean? Because the language had evolved and those idioms were forgotten. So whether you read it in the original Greek or you read it in Al-Kindi's translation, either way you still didn't know what the idioms meant. Nobody did. Even the Greeks couldn't read Aristotle. And so they're stumped. They don't know what to do. And Ibn Sina goes, I know there's a genius in here. I got to tap into it. How do I tap into it? One day he's in the book section of the bazaar, and he passes by a book. And it says, it's written by Farabi. It says, Al-Farabi's idiomatic translation of Aristotle. Al-Farabi would read an idiom, try to guess what it meant. He'd plug it in, see if it worked. If it didn't work, he'd come back, try a different one. And he kept doing this until he decoded the idioms. And he realized what each idiom meant. And now you could know Aristotle and what he was saying. Ibn Sina reads this, figures out what the idioms are. He already has the text memorized. Ibn Sina suddenly, instantly knows Aristotle. And he goes nuts. What he realizes is that Aristotle is on to something about the nature of the universe. So, Aristotle says, so I guess I have to tell you what Plato says. Plato says that there is three realities. There's the reality we experience. So this floor, that wall, the chair, my suit, me. But that's not the real real. The realer real is what's in my head. So my imagination of a chair is realer than an actual chair. My understanding of the wall is better than the actual wall. And he goes, but that's not the real either. Reality exists in a plane of existence that he calls the forms, or the idios. And so what happens is, if I'm going to make a chair, my mind reaches up into the idios, grabs the true chair, brings it into my head, but it's a copy. Copy is never as good as the original. And then my hands take the copy in my head and make a physical copy. So the chair, that chair, is a copy of the real thing. Aristotle reads this and goes, oh my God, what a bunch of nonsense. What even is that? It's nonsensical. Aristotle says, no, the chair is a collection of essences. This chair is black, so it has black essence. It's plastic, so it has plastic essence. It's shaped in a specific way. It has chair essence. That a thing is a series of essences. Ibn Sina goes, those essences are actually information. For example, there might be a scratch on that chair. And then the shape of the chair itself is information. And the molecular construction, he didn't have the concept of molecules, but they did have the concept of atoms. The construction, the material in there, that's also information. But he takes it one step further. He goes, so when that chair was originally made, it was not perfect, but it was close to perfect because it probably didn't have any scratches on it. It didn't have any damage. It didn't have any wear and tear on it. But then, as time goes by, more information is added to the chair because it gets bumped and it gets scratched. In other words, there's a relationship between information and time. Take me, for example. When I was born, I was a lot easier to describe, in part because I was a lot smaller. But also I had fewer scars, and there was a lot less information in my head. So the description of me was really easy. But as time goes forward, the description of me becomes more and more complicated. Until finally, I die. And my cells break apart and decay back into the earth. The description of me becomes extraordinarily complicated at that point. In other words, as time goes by, the universe increases the amount of information. And then he goes, oh wow. What if we ran the clock backwards? So instead of us thinking about the future where there's more information, if we go back, there's less and less information. And he goes, okay, so at some point we reach a moment where there's the minimum amount of information necessary for the universe itself to unravel from that moment. He calls that point in time and that information packet necessary being. In other words, 1,000 years ago, Ibn Sina described Big Bang and singularities and entropy. Also, that was not a major achievement for him. His real achievement was he's the guy who invented modern medicine. So if you look him up, it'll say the father of modern medicine. Some of you will get confused and go, I thought Hippocrates was the father of medicine. Yeah, because you're forgetting, I said modern, I didn't say medicine. I said modern medicine. Until Ibn Sina, medicine looked like this. There was disease, and the way disease affected you, but was based on, did you eat fish and drink milk? And did a black cat walk in front of you? Was Jupiter in alignment with Saturn? If so, when disease hits you, you're going to bleed from the eyes and have uncontrollable bowel movements. Ibn Sina walks up and goes, this is nonsense. What are you talking about? There isn't disease, there's diseases. They're all different, and they have different transmission vectors. So one disease, you sneeze on it, you get it. Another disease, you touch fecal matter and you get it. Another disease is bloodborne. Another disease comes by insects. Another disease comes from rats. In other words, what we need to do is we need to think about the transmission vectors. In his book, here you go, Qanun al-Tib. Qanun means law. Q-A-N-U-N. So if you're in physics and they say you need to read the canon, C-A-N-O-N, not C-A-N-N-O-N, means law because it's an Arabic word. You're using an Arabic word. Qanun is Q-A-N-U-N. It doesn't have to be, but that's how I'm spelling it. It could be with two O's or... So, The Canon of Medicine is the book he writes. In it, he includes hundreds of cures. We still use a bunch of those cures today. In Europe and the Middle East, his book is still necessary reading in medical school. But that's not what's interesting about him. Here's what he says. He says, you know what's better than all these cures I stuck in here? Prevention. Your goal is not to get the disease to begin with. If you cannot get the disease, that's way better than getting the disease, risking dying and getting cured, and then dealing with the side effects of the disease later. That's why he's the father of modern medicine. He's that guy who said, interrupt the transmission vectors. So when I was taught this in school, I was taught that Semmelweis, the Hungarian, figured this out. Yes, Semmelweis, the Hungarian, figured it out again 800 years after Ibn Sina figured it out first. Ibn Sina had a contemporary. His name was Ibn al-Haytham. Actually, for the record, neither guy was actually called Ibn Sina or Ibn al-Haytham. Their names were shockingly similar, and so it's hard to keep them apart. Abu Ali al-Hassan, Ibn Abdullah, Ibn al-Haytham, I think is Ibn al-Haytham, and then Abu Ali al-Hussein, Ibn Abdullah, Ibn Sina. So we just went, screw it, we're just going to use the last parts of their names, which is like their grandfather's name, and we're just going to reject the rest of it so that I don't have to remember which Abu Ali I'm talking about, and we can move on. So, Ibn al-Haytham was from Iraq, he was from Basra. He ended up by the way, Al-Farabi actually was a student of Ishaq after Baghdad was created. That became the repository of knowledge. Baghdad was the center of it all. And Ishaq was a Christian Arab. And I just thought I'd throw that in there because I want to make sure that I didn't ignore the fact that this isn't just a Muslim project. This was also a Christian, and for that matter, there were Jews involved in this as well, because, right, this was a tolerant society that embraced the differences and allowed them to thrive. And so Ibn al-Haytham goes to Cairo and he starts working